These my Dallas make it hurt.
Welcome back to the Deep Cover Podcast. I'm your host, Kerry Stevenson at Kerry1313 on Twitter. I want to again shout out my co-hosts, my brothers, Mike Crawford, Chris Aguilera. We back with more workshop for you. This time we're going to do the wide receiver tiers. For those you that aren't familiar with tier rankings, take a look at the previous episode. I go into my running back tiers, but first I kind of break down why tiers have been so important to me and how they've helped me kind of take my fantasy game to the next level, and how they, something that can help you do the same. So we're gonna jump right into this thing. Before I get all the way into it, it's important to kind of shape these things because if you're watching this video, you should be trying to create tiers of your own. And when you do that, make it completely you. Your process, your rankings, your players, but also don't be afraid to kind of step outside of the box. You know, based on what you deem is appropriate and based on your draft strategy. These tier rankings, you'll see it more specifically, probably with wide receivers than any other position. That my tiers are going to be shaped heavily off of the way that I'm drafting. The way that I'm categorizing these guys, the buckets that I'm kind of putting them in. That's going to kind of be based off of my strategy. So don't be afraid to do that. Be an individual. You want to absorb as much info as you can out there in this space, especially from the experts, the guys that pour a lot of time into this. But at the end of the day, your name is on these picks when you're in drafts and you're drafting these players. So you know, make it you too. Have that influence on your team. With that being said, we're gonna go ahead and jump into it. We're gonna jump into this first tier. This first tier, we gotta name it. First tier, we're gonna name for that is gonna be elite wide receiver ones, and that's pretty self-explanatory there. This is the very top, the high end guys. Um, so for me, right at the top, I've gone back and forth a lot over the last month or so trying to get this thing figured out, and going back and forth a lot with Steph Diggs and Tyreek Hill. And honestly, I still don't think I've completely figured it out. But when you look at Tyreek Hill, you take a healthy Sammy Watkins out of the equation for them. And Sammy Watkins was just enough of a threat, like got just enough targets to kind of influence Tyreek Hill's ceiling, his target ceiling. Uh, so you take Sammy Watkins out of the equation, and then you kind of factor in the fact that the Chiefs started kind of, giving him more of a full workload of targets. You start seeing more of those double-digit target games from him. So you put all those things together with just his game-breaking ability. But a guy that can score from anywhere on the field, any play. When you got a guy like Mahomes back there at quarterback who can challenge every blade of grass every single play, that's the kind of guy you want on your team. That kind of explosive ability. But like I said, if he's getting double digit targets too, then you're talking about volume on top of that explosiveness. So that's putting him in a completely different category. Then you look at the case of Steph Diggs with the Bills, and they have no desire to add more volume to that running game. They've made that kind of clear on off season when asked about it, and I think that's great. They've talked about increasing the efficiency in the run game, but not the volume. So we're expecting them to be a very pass heavy team again this year, and that bodes well for Steph Diggs. Now, target wise for these teams as a whole, uh, both teams are only have about 100 available. Well, actually, less than 100 for both of them as far as available targets. So, not really a lot of targets more for these guys to soak up. But interestingly enough, both teams are top 10 in vacated targets within the 10-yard line. So that's going to add a little additional boost of TD upside for these guys. Um, being able to maybe score a little bit more in the red zone. So I mean, you're probably splitting hairs with these two guys, but these are guys that I want to have on my team. Both will be great picks. So that's kind of where I was, but then we got the news that Aaron Rodgers was coming back, and I bumped Devontae Adams up over both of these guys. When you look at Green Bay's situation, they didn't add anybody in the passing game of consequence. They added Randall Cobb of late. Not to him. Good player, but he's not anybody that's gonna make a huge difference in Adams' workload. And Adams is a guy that just has an uncommon role. He's a wide receiver one that's you know kind of got that locked in volume on a week to week basis. But he's a guy that gets very high end looks in that red zone area. You get down to the goal line, and sometimes it feels like they would rather throw it into him from the one than running in with one in the back. So he's the guy that you kind of have like a wide receiver one goal line running back kind of situation going on with him. So you know, heavy volume, great offensive environment. Like I said, he's going to be, peppered in that inside the 10-yard line range. So bumping Adams right away up to that wide receiver one. Real quality pick now that we know Rogers is back in the fold. Another guy having this range is Calvin Ridley. Um, you look at Calvin Ridley's stats when Julio Jones is out of games the last couple years, and the stat lines look like Social Security numbers. The dude is just putting up numbers crazy. I think last year he had like a 50% air yard share in the games Julio missed. He was top three in red zone targets last year. Just truly absurd stuff. So yeah, I mean that pretty much speaks for itself. Like draft Calvin Ridley a lot this year in fantasy. So um, that's really it. It's elite for a reason. I don't throw that word out lightly. So those are the guys in that tier for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw these guys on the board here. I got Devontae Adams at one. Um, you know, this is a this is how I feel today kind of thing. I'm gonna go with Stephon Diggs at two. Um, then I'm gonna go Tyreek Hill um, at wide receiver three, and then I'm gonna go Calvin Ridley at wide receiver four, and that's gonna close off of that first tier there. So now we're gonna go to tier two, and tier two for me is gonna be the a high end wide receiver ones. These are guys that um, are maybe close to this range, but there's something missing in their profile somewhere that keeps from being in that range. So let's go ahead and I'll go ahead and throw the name in here first. So we say high end wide receiver ones. Right. So let's talk about a few of the guys that's kind of in this range. DeAndre Hopkins, probably most people would have him in that first tier, that elite wide receiver tier. But I have some questions with DeAndre Hopkins. You look at the Cardinals all season. They finally have the wide receivers to kind of competently run that four wide receiver base offense. They've been wanting to run over the last couple years. They gave AJ Green $8 million. Regardless how you feel about AJ Green, I think he can still can play. Maybe not at his peak level, but I think he still has um, something to offer there. But even if he didn't, $8 million is $8 million. That's a lot of money, and you know NFL teams they lie a lot, but they kind of show their hand with how much they pay guys and how they value players in the draft. So they showed how much they value AJ Green with that contract, and I expect him to be on the field close to every down. And then I just said they show their hand as far as the money they pay, and then they show their hand again in the draft. They tell the truth in these situations. They took Rondell Moore in the second round. They prioritized him, in the draft, and they've already talked about manufacturing touches for him in that people like to joke and say horizontal raid. But I mean, really, that's what it is. They're going to beat you over the head, uh, you know, underneath. And Rondell Moore fits that to a T with his ability after the catch, uncovering, getting open quick, and being able to do things as a scheme touch player. So then when you factor in uh, the positive effect that that spread personnel is going to have um, on their run game. That four wide receiver spread, and then you add in Kyler Murray's kind of gravity he has in the running game. Holding some of those defensive ends and kind of contain because of his ability to take off. And that's another kind of not to DeAndre Hopkins' target ceiling. Now he's got he's got competition now. They're not throwing out the Mayor Birds and some of the guys they've had to throw out the last couple years that aren't really worthy of high volume targets. But now you got guys that can do some of those things. Then you have Christian Kirk is a holdover guy that I haven't mentioned. He's another guy, solid inside outside threat. Maybe haven't lived up to some of the hype he's gotten, but he's still, a pretty good player and a player that's worthy of heavy snaps, a player that's worthy of targets. So now all of a sudden, this is a crowded space, and they don't necessarily have the need to give DeAndre Hopkins 160 targets. And then there's the elephant in the room with his, kind of perceived view as far as that vaccine goes. And so that's another thing that, I'm not gonna make a huge deal about it, but that's something to think about. That's a factor into your evaluation. All this stuff is an evaluation. You put all these things into almost like a formula, and you let that kind of determine how high or not high you are on the player. And so you never want to throw anything out. So you look at all those things, and I think it kind of blocks his ceiling a bit. Um, you know, if he's on the football field, we know what kind of talent he is. He's gonna ball out. Isn't I don't want to throw these things out there and all of a sudden make you think not to draft him. But the concerns are the concerns, and that's why I wouldn't be comfortable putting him with those top four guys. So that's my thoughts on him. Another guy that's kind of in his range is Keenan Allen. He lacks the downfield usage, and the splits with Austin Eckler kind of cloud his ceiling a bit. Austin Eckler, because he gets so much work in the passing game, he kind of hurts Keenan Allen's overall target upside. But looking at last year, I think he still averaged around 10 targets a game with Eckler on the field. And then with no Hunter Henry there this year, that could boost his looks in the red zone. So Keenan Allen still like a lot, really rock solid pick in his range. Another guy, AJ Brown, he's a player I love. Um, and you can kind of argue on both sides of his target upside. Uh, if you want to look at it from a positive direction, as far as his target upside, that Titans defense looks shaky on paper once again. So we could see a lot more shootouts. But then when I was kind of studying schedules and going through some of that stuff, Warren Sharp, I'm sorry, had an interesting stat, uh, kind of analyzing their schedule that jumped out to me. They play 8 games against quarterbacks that were in the bottom 20th percentile in expected points added this season. And then when you look at the kind of recent injury with Carson Wentz, that could add to that number because they're in the same division, so that that's a team they're going to see twice. If Carson Wentz misses a long stretch of games or possibly the whole season, that knocks the Colts down a notch, and that further affects that schedule. So shaky defense or not shaky defense, because of that, they may not need a top-notch defensive performance to be able to play that keep away game they want to play, and keep the ball in Derrick Henry's hands and run play action off of that. They may be able to kind of stay in their wheelhouse more often. So, that's something to consider with AJ Brown because you know, really the only kind of knock on him is the target upside. But he's still a guy I'm going to bet on. I'm going to bet on the talent. I'm going to bet on his ability to be a highly efficient player. But again, like I said, that's part of the evaluation. You got to factor in everything. Another guy that kind of falls in that same boat as it relates to target value and concerns is Justin Jefferson. But unlike the Titans, I expect the Vikings to bounce back on defense. They're getting Michael Pierce back. He did the COVID opt out last year. So you book in him on the interior of that defensive line with Dalvin Tomlinson, and that spells bad news for opposing run game. So those two guys are going to be a brick wall. Reminiscent of that Williams wall they had years ago. And then you get a healthy Daniil Hunter coming back, and we know what kind of problem he is in the pass rush game. And then a couple sleepers on their defense. Don't sleep on my boy Xavier Woods coming over in free agency from Dallas. I really like him. Uh, I like adding him to that stable that the Vikings have. They should be a lot more healthy. So kind of bring some stability, playing with a little more talent there in Minnesota. I think it's going to help Xavier Woods out a lot. And then the sleeper on the defensive line in the draft that I really liked coming out of Florida State, Janarius Robinson. He's a guy that I think can do some things as a sub package rusher for them, and maybe able to kind of break in and do a little bit more. They're getting Stephen Weatherly back on the defensive line. Sorry, I'm not trying to turn this into some kind of defensive breakdown, but I think things look well positioned for the Vikings to bounce back on defense. So that's something that you have to factor in with Justin Jefferson. Dude is a baller. And I wouldn't overthink this too much. I'm still going to be taking him a lot. But again, factor it into your thinking. There's going to be maybe a cap on his overall target ceiling, which keeps him from you know being in that top tier. Again, I just talked about, elite guys are elite for a reason. You want to find guys that you can't poke too many holes into their evaluation. And then one other guy I'm thinking about in this range is DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf. I'm sorry, I said Metcalf. But DK Metcalf has a big swing factor in terms of how this offense is designed, with Seattle and kind of how things transpired last year. They started off hot, started off throwing it around, and then they went away from that. And so we're kind of bracing ourselves for kind of a run heavy approach. But what if it's not? What if it's balanced? We've heard their new OC, Shane Waldron, talk about wanting to play faster, and that would be huge for the entire offense, run game and passing game. But if they're balanced and if they're playing faster, DK is a guy that has the talent that he could kind of scream to the front of this tier. If you're seeing those kind of changes, if you're seeing modern kind of finishes on this offense and aggression in the passing game, he's a guy that could easily jump to the front of this tier. And if you don't see these things, if they kind of want to go, back to the Stone Ages with this running game, then he's probably a guy that's probably just going to be looking at 6 to 8 targets per game. Um, but even with that, he's locked in with one of the best deep ball throwers in the league with Russell Wilson. So that, and with his measurables, he's always dangerous. But we want to see, that's going to be one of those teams you want to watch early on in preseason, to see how they're doing things, to see just how fast they're playing, and are they implementing motion, some of those things, um, to kind of wait and see to kind of make your full evaluation. But he should still be somewhere in his range regardless. But he's a guy that you may want to prioritize more if you see some of those things, being changed as far as their approach on offense. So we're gonna go ahead and plug these guys in here. So um, I'm gonna respectfully, respect to what he did last season. I'm going to put DeAndre Hopkins at the top of this tier, at the wide receiver. What's that, five? Um, I really like AJ Brown. I was kind of disappointed when they um, made the Julio Jones trade, just from a perspective of, I was hoping to see that 160 target kind of season from AJ Brown. And so I don't know if we're gonna get um I don't know if we're gonna get that. So that kind of puts a damper on things, but I still really, really like AJ Brown coming into the season, and he's gonna be a guy I'm gonna be targeting. Um and then I'm gonna go with Justin Jefferson after that. Um early kind of training camp buzz with him looks great. Saw some clips of him just undressing guys with his routes. He looks ready to build on what he did last season. So a guy that I'm looking at um, very closely. Then I'm going to go DK Metcalf. Love his overall upside from on a week to week basis, and like I said, he's going to be one of those guys I'm looking at closely. Because he has that swing factor with that offense. And then last in this tier, I'm going to go with Keenan Allen, just a rock solid guy. Um, you need the red zone usage there, because he's a guy that's going to be targeted more underneath. Not going to give you a lot of uh, big plays, but the volume is going to be there. He's locked in with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert looked for him a lot. So he's a guy that's going to be a rock solid wide receiver pick for you. So that's going to be the end of that tier for me. That's going to be the high end wide receiver ones, and now we're going to move on to tier three, which for me is going to be the high end wide receiver twos. So we'll go ahead and plug this in here. High end wide receiver twos. And let's talk through these guys. A guy I really like this year is Amari Cooper. I talked about him in the best ball draft review episode that I did. If you haven't checked it out, go back and definitely take a look at that. Best ball is a great tool to help you get prepared for drafts and kind of have um, that extra ability to make money. Just set it and forget it. Come back to your drafts in December and see what kind of damage you did. But Mark Cooper, like I said, 49 targets in Dak's four healthy games last year. And we know how much the Cowboys are returning. The health concern is there, obviously. He didn't start the off training camp on the pup list, which is very encouraging to me. Kind of a wait and see approach. We'll see. Hopefully, he's able to get on the field here in short order. If not, then maybe we need to bump him down a little bit. But for right now, he's a guy I think is being undervalued in drafts, and he's a guy that I'm going to be looking at very closely. Another guy like Terry McLaurin. Um, Terry McLaurin balled out last year, but people are kind of losing sight of the fact that he played 15 games last year, but he played through a high ankle sprain. He put up 1,100 yards receiving on a high ankle sprain, battling through that the whole year. Now he's getting a clear quarterback upgrade, an aggressive downfield passer. Um, like I can't say enough how big of a difference this is going to be for his game, going from Alex Smith to Ryan Fitzpatrick. So he's a guy I'm targeting early and aggressively. Love Terry McLaurin this year. Another guy I'm looking at in this range, Tyler Lockett. We just talked about his teammate DK Metcalf, but Tyler Lockett had more targets than DK Metcalf last year. Same kind of thought process applies here with that swing factor for their offense. So, if the environment for DK Metcalf is going to be better with some of these changes, if we see changes, it's going to be the same thing for Tyler Lockett. And, that target tree is going to be, not a very large one. It's going to be DK, it's going to be um, Tyler Metcalf, and then we'll probably see Gerald Everett kind of third in line there, and then Chris Carson will get his few targets. But we're not going to see a lot else. So Tyler Lockett, we know the kind of mind meld he has with Russell Wilson is up there with Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. Amongst the top of the league as guys that show that on field rapport and chemistry. And Tyler Lockett, there were some peaks and valleys. His blow up spots were huge, and then he had some other games where he was very quiet. We'll kind of see if the offense kind of evolving changes that and kind of gives him more opportunities to avoid those kind of peaks and valleys. But even if it doesn't, him and Russell Wilson are kind of pretty much locked in. So that's actually the end of that tier for me. Those are the guys I think have um, you know the least amount of questions in that range. So I'm going to go ahead and plug them in here. I have Amari Cooper first in this tier. Uh, Again, if something happens, if there is a more of a delay with his um, return to the field, and then we'll address that at that time, and make a shift if we need to. Terry McLaurin, I'm going to go with number two here in this tier, and then Tyler Lockett plugging in third in this tier. So kind of a little small specialized tier, but that's I think there's a little bit of a gap and a little bit more, um, you know, kind of questions with the rest of the guys in this range, and I don't know why this is doing all of this, but we're gonna push through here. So go ahead and delete these, shift that up like so, like that, and let's go ahead and jump into this fourth tier. And the fourth tier for me is the rest of the wide receiver twos. So these are guys that probably a lot of people are going to have in the same range as Cooper and those guys. Probably some of these guys, other analysts are going to have higher than the three guys I named above. But I have questions and concerns and different things with these guys, and so that's why I bumped them into a different tier. So go ahead and kind of run through these guys and kind of talk through them. Mike Evans, love his game, love him as a player. I do have some concerns with him though. At his peak last year, as far as a volume, from a volume standpoint, he averaged just about 8 targets a game. Um, but if you remember, the Bucks were still trying to figure things out well until last season. They weren't uh, the kind of the juggernaut you saw in the Super Bowl that dismantled the Chiefs. Took them a while to get there. They didn't become that kind of fully actualized version uh, pretty much until the Super Bowl, honestly. So I think they're going to come into this season very much established as far as what they want to do, and I think that's going to show as far as the caliber of team they'll be. I think they're going to be a very front end team. One of the established front end teams in all the NFL, and I think that's going to end up leading to more clock killing opportunities and less throws. And so I expect them to run it a little bit more. And then you have a guy that already had value concerns. That's concerning to me. Uh, TDs could wind up being very important for Evans, and even though I love his role in the red zone, is very appealing. I do have concerns with relying on that. So, you know, that's something that I think you want to factor into your evaluation. With Mike Evans. Then another guy having his range, Allen Robinson. People have concerns about the quarterback situation, and rightfully so. But when I look at their schedule, the Bears face six top nine quarterbacks in expected points added per play, and that's the most that anybody in the NFL will face this year. So they could find themselves playing in catch up mode a lot. That's what we want. I want him in a situation where he has to play from behind. I want him to be peppered with targets. And so that vision that a lot of people have with this quarterback situation, a lot of people have laid this out, and I share that sentiment. I think Andy Dalton will start the year. He'll pepper Allen Robinson with underneath targets, and at some point, Justin Fields is going to take over, and he's going to unlock the chunk plays, the plays downfield. But it's going to be at less volume, yes, but it's going to hopefully balance itself out with the guy with the threat that he is as far as down the field accuracy and being able to extend plays, and get out there and start freestyling and getting those chunk plays that way. So Allen Robinson is a guy, piqued my interest a lot. Then we look at another guy I have in his range is CD Lamb. Now that price is up, and it's stuck, but it's a little bit too up for me compared to what I think his um, ability to beat his ADP. I want players that can beat their ADP. And, it's no question that just from a pure talent perspective in that offensive environment, this dude could really blow up. And I'll acknowledge that, part of my caution on Lamb at his ADP is probably a little bit skewed by my thoughts on Amari Cooper. If I'm really high on Cooper, that probably makes it harder for me to be high on CD Lamb. So, I acknowledge that part of my thinking. But at the end of the day, I think CD Lamb, yeah, is a very very talented player, and I think he's going to have a very good fantasy season. I just think where he's going right now is just a little bit too much, dip on the chip, for me. So, um, but I want to respect the fact that this dude is incredibly talented, and it's not um, it's not something where it's not in the range of outcomes that he could just overcome Amari Cooper and become the guy, or Amari Cooper could just, not be healthy, and CeeDee Lamb just completely take over. So I think people that are drafting CeeDee Lamb are telling themselves that story, and that's fair, and I respect that process, and maybe something I may inherit at some point in this process as I'm continuing to do work and continuing to figure these tiers out. So CD Lamb, very interesting guy early on. And then another guy having this range is Julio Jones. And my thoughts on Julio Jones is pretty simple. He's still so good at football. And while he probably won't be getting double digit targets, the thought of him in a potentially heavy play action scheme is very appealing. He, like I said, probably not going to be getting double digit targets a week, but if he's getting 7, 8 targets a week and six of them come out of play action. Man, just his ability downfield, like he's still just smoking corners. So um, him on deep crossers, just fly routes, whatever it is, his ability to turn 5 target, 6 target games into 150 and 2 touchdowns is clear and evident. So he's a guy that I want to be in on. So those are the only guys I have in this tier on that high end wide receiver 2 tier. So we're gonna go ahead and get these guys sorted out. So first in this tier, I'm gonna go with Allen Robinson. Like I said, I like his chances of possibly being able to play both sides of the fence at the same time from a volume and then potentially downfield kind of stance. And then next, I'm going to go with CD Lamb. Again, I've talked about my concerns with CD Lamb, but the talent is clear, the offensive environment is clear. All those things um, just going a little bit too high for me right now. If that finds its way to stabilize or go down, um, I'll be looking at him in a different light. Or if Amari Cooper goes down or something happens there, then I'm definitely bumping CD Lamb up. And CD Lamb is a guy I'm still going to be interested in, just maybe not in the second round, third round kind of range. Next, I'm going with Julio Jones, and then I'm going to close out this tier with Mike Evans. I'm probably the most concerned with Mike Evans out of all the guys here. Um, his kind of saving grace is I think he had 15 touchdowns in those, what was that, 20 games he played with Tom Brady last year. So and that they're throwing it up. Tom Brady has shown in the red zone his ability to throw those fades, and they're looking for him in that red zone area. So that's not something I want to um, it's not something I want to take lightly, even if I do have concerns with his volume. So let me name this before I move on. So this was high end. What do we name this? High end. No, this was the rest of the wide receiver twos. Actually, I should name it mid to low end wide receiver twos. All right, so let's move on. We're gonna move on to tier five. And tier five, let's go ahead and name this. I'm going to name tier five high end wide receiver threes. High end wide receiver threes. All right, so let's talk about some of the guys in this range. Kind of first off, for me, DJ Moore. Some of the metrics, well, really a lot of the metrics point to a blow up for DJ Moore. And the fact that he has back to back only 4 TD seasons, it's kind of suppressing that buzz. But when you look at what he's been able to do the last couple years, you look at his overall talent level, look at the fact that the Panthers are leaving, have 200 available targets in this offense. Now, I do think a lot of that is going to be absorbed by a healthy Christian McCaffrey. Uh, Sounds like Terrace Marshall is going to be lining up in the slot for the Panthers early on, and I think whatever McCaffrey doesn't take, you could see Marshall get a lot of that. So I think for the most part, those available targets are going to go to those two guys. But I could see DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson uh, kind of getting a little bit off of that, chipping a little bit off of that. But DJ Moore is a guy I want to stay high on. He's kind of gotten unlucky with the touchdowns. And that's what, again, that's what's kind of suppressing his overall buzz. But like I said, he's a guy that has true breakout potential in his range of outcomes. Just a guy that um, much in line with Tyreek Hill and some of these other guys that have the ability to score from anywhere on the field. And the Panthers use him down the field. They didn't use him as much as a scheme touch guy last year, but we know that's what he came in the league um, being something that was like a calling card for him. So again, he's just a talented guy that could beat his ADP, and so we want as many guys like that as possible. Talented guys that can beat their ADPs. Um, then you got a couple of groups of teammates that I haven't been able to necessarily separate from each other, but I have them all in this range. The Rams have a group of guys, Cooper Cup and Robert Woods, that are both getting that quarterback upgrade with Matt Stafford. They're in the mix. Woods gives you that run game involvement on a weekly basis. He's going to get a couple carries every week. Then he has that ability in the underneath game and some of the things they do with motion, and he's going to get his 80 to 90 catches. Then you got Cooper Cup. He's going to get his 80 to 90 catches as well, most likely. And he gives you that red zone involvement, somebody that they really look for in the red zone to make plays. So both of those guys are really rock solid options, and that's one of those things where I'm just kind of I have them grouped together, but I'm kind of trying to figure out the upside, who has the most. I'm kind of leaning Cup right now, but we'll see as things go along. Another group of teammates I have in this range is Jamar Chase and T Higgins. Those two guys are spearheading. I'm sorry, a talented passing offense in Cincy. Cincy has a tough schedule this year, so it's going to be a lot of throws. They play at a plus place that equals more throws. Promising young quarterback that equals more throws. So I'm all in on that. I think they're both going to be terrific picks. Upside for them of the two, I'm leaning Jamar Chase because I think he can win in a couple more ways than T. Higgins can. But T. Higgins is a guy I think is one of the best values in all of fantasy this year. Uh, with the season, I think he's going to be capable of having. So, really like those two guys, and just a really strong group there. And I'm not gonna go, into all these guys into detail, but those are the guys that I'm kind of intrigued by the most in that range. So let's go ahead and plug them in. I'm gonna put DJ Moore at the top of this tier. I just think his upside, if touchdowns go into his favor, um, is gonna be big time. And then, with Sam Darnold there at quarterback this year, last year they used DJ Moore down the field more often, but they had Teddy Bridgewater. We know Teddy Bridgewater's game is not predicated on taking shots downfield, but Sam Darnold does. So that unlocks maybe another element. If DJ Moore can do some of the things he's done over his career, but kind of unlock that deep shot game, then we're talking about full on breakout there. So like DJ Moore there. I'm gonna go with the Rams guys. I'll go with Cooper Cup first, then Robert Woods next. And both of these guys, I think they are, among the uh, most quality picks in fantasy this year. I think they're going to be very, very, solid guys to add to your teams. Then I'm going to go with another group of teammates, and I'm going to go Jamar Chase first, T. Higgins next. Jamar Chase just, you know, crazy, crazy prospect. If he was a guy that was maybe 2 inches taller, we'd be talking about him uh, in the same vein that we talked about, um, you know, the Calvin Johnsons when they came out, and AJ Greens, and some of those guys. I think Jamar Chase, he's not that full on freak of a downfield athlete, as maybe Calvin Johnson might be, but his overall game, his physicalness, his athleticism, his ability to win in different ways, I think is gonna translate very, very well, to the NFL level. So really, really like him. Was really high on him. Dynasty rookie. I kind of went back and forth on him and Najee Harris as the number one guy, but I settled in on Jamar Chase being my number one guy. I just really, really like his upside. I'm gonna go Chris Godwin next. Again, I kind of broke it down with Mike Evans' situation. Um, you know, Concerns about just how much volume these guys are able to get. Antonio Brown will be back, and should be healthy. Maybe not to start the season, but as the season progresses, he should ramp up more and more. You got Grant there. You got OJ Howard coming back. You got um, Cameron Braid. I don't think is just going to completely go away. So a lot of mouths to feed. And again, I think this is going to be a really good team that I think is going to be, um, you know, salting away games with the run game in the fourth quarter. So something you have to keep in mind, when you're drafting these guys. What are the upside of these guys? You need that environment to be right, and the environment is going to be good because that's a good offense that's going to score a lot of points. But they're also an offense that's going to be spreading around to a few different guys. Another guy like Adam Thielen in this range. Now Justin Jefferson has kind of uh, came in and become the number one wide receiver, so that obviously hurts Thielen's upside, but this is unlike Tampa Bay situation. This is a very narrow kind of target distribution with these guys. They're not going, to five, six guys at a time. It's Jefferson, it's Thielen first and foremost. Then secondarily, they're going to go to Irv Smith. They're going to go to, obviously Dalvin Cook out of the backfield. And then don't sleep on Tyler Conklin there, inline guy, athletic enough, good hands. He's a guy that, you know, is probably going to just play that inline Kyle Rudolph role. So don't sleep on him as a guy that can, maybe do some things. Maybe not enough to necessarily draft him in fantasy, but he might be able to get you through a bye week, or something of that sort. So like Adam Thielen, Robbie Anderson, love DJ Moore, but I equally love Robbie Anderson. So definitely plugging him into this tier. Again, Carolina's another one of those narrow target distribution teams. They're going to throw to DJ Moore. They're going to throw to Robbie Anderson. They're going to throw to Christian McCaffrey. The tight ends are going to kind of get the scraps, but ball is going to go to those handful of guys. I think Terrace Marshall is going to, um, mix in, and he'll be above the tight ends. I think he's going to carve out a pretty solid role, but those front end guys, Moore, Anderson, and McCaffrey, are going to get a lot of the targets there in Carolina. And then Deontay Johnson, he's a guy. I'm trying to figure out whether he should be in this tier or the next tier, I kind of just decided to go ahead and throw him in this tier. Big Ben loves this guy. Big Ben, um, we don't know. People are saying his arm looks better, but he was a guy that didn't look very interested in throwing down the field. And when he did throw down the field, it didn't look great all the time. So he loved throwing to Deontay Johnson, and so the sheer volume of that puts him in this tier for me. That could change. I know they got Najee Harris. They want to run the ball more. We'll see how that all shakes out. But for now, I'm going to put Deontay Johnson at the end of that tier. So we're gonna move on here. We're gonna move on to tier 7. So tier 7. This is gonna be um, what I like to call. I'm sorry. Actually, that's tier 6. Let's fix this here. Tier 6. So tier 6 is going to be a tier of mid-tier wide receiver threes, is what I'm going to call it. So because there's a lot of receivers once we get down into this range, and that's going to be something that's going to be vital um, in your drafts is kind of separating this group of guys because there's going to be a lot of guys, in this range. So I'm going to name this mid-tier wide receiver threes. And so looking at some guys I have in this tier, it's going to be small. It's going to be a small kind of specialized tier. And these are guys I think, as of right now, for me, kind of separate themselves from the rest of the guys in this range. So kind of talk through a few of these guys. DJ Chark is one. DJ Chark is a guy I'm probably too low on because of all the unknowns with this Jacksonville offense, and some of the things that Urban Meyer has said early on in his tenure, kind of makes him look a little funny in the light to me, and kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit. But um, really, and I can't remember who pointed this out. I can't remember what analyst it was, and I'm sorry. I wish I had the name, but something I heard maybe a couple weeks back, it just really kind of stuck out to me. And they were talking about the concerns with Urban Meyer. Um, but they said, what if Trevor Lawrence is just that good and that none of this other stuff matters? That he just comes in and raises the level, of everybody in that offense, and our concerns of suboptimal approaches and draft picks and some of the things that Jacksonville has done don't matter because Trevor Lawrence is just that good, and that's very very possible. And so when you look at that, um, you know, DJ Chark would be a primary beneficiary of that. He's very very talented guy. Who wins down the field, wins on the boundary. Showed a lot more versatility to his game than we anticipated when he was drafted. So he's a guy that um, can beat his ADP. And whatever I said on multiple occasions in this pod, we want talented guys that can beat their ADP, and DJ Chark is one of those guys. So definitely keep an eye out on him. See how that thing progresses in Jacksonville. OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr., another guy, still just such a talented guy. Even in the run first offense, like he was able to carve out a solid volume role before his injury last year. And if he's back to 100%, and him and Baker can grow their kind of on field connection, they found ways to take shots with Odell Beckham in the flow of the offense without kind of breaking what they've done so well. He's another guy that can beat his ADP. Talented guy, possibly beat his ADP. As a guy you want to, consider once you start getting into this range. Another guy I consider to be in this range, Brandon Cooks. He has obvious QB concerns. We don't know what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson, but um, you know, it's very unlikely that he suits up um, for the Texans. Really, I don't think he should really be shooting up for anybody with what he has going on and what he's accused of. But that's a different story. But just looking at Cooks, he's just a really talented guy. And even though he has QB concerns, he's clearly the number one option um, on a team that we expect to be playing from behind a lot. They odds on favorite to be the worst team in the league. Um, so Cooks could get an insane amount of targets this year. And we want to have a piece of that. We don't want to go gun ho on players on a bad team, but you know bad teams, they create fantasy value too. So we're not gonna go full on Texan stacks, but Brandon Cooks is a guy that maybe could get 160 targets if he stays healthy the whole season. And so who doesn't want 160 targets on their team? You want that, especially when you don't have to pay a premium pick for it. So Brandon Cooks is definitely somebody I'm watching. Another guy having his range, Chase Claypool, because he's a guy that just, freakish talent, just looks like a player that should be an outlier. His pathway isn't clear at all. Like his quarterback may be washed. His QB loves to throw to Deontay Johnson. Juju Smith Schuster is going to be involved. Najee Harris is going to come in and he's going to get his volume. He's going to get plenty of carries. Najee Harris is going to get targeted in the passing game. James Washington is a good player that they like, and he's probably going to chip in and to Claypool snaps. But as we saw last season, with some of the things that Claypool was able to do, some of the plays he was able to make, he's a freakish enough talent to make that stuff not matter. Like, like he, with everything I just told you that I laid out for you, he could still go out there and score 15 touchdowns. Like that's in his range of outcomes because of just how talented of a player that he is. So that's it for this tier for me. This is something I'm going to be kind of watching closely, and I'll add to this tier as things go on. Preseason is getting ready to start. Keep an eye out on those camp reports, and make sure you're abreast of every situation and what's going on, so you potentially add to this tier. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug these guys in. Um, so I'm gonna go DJ Chark first there. Odell Beckham Jr. I'm gonna go second in this tier. Then I'm gonna go, man, I'm debating between Cooks and Claypool. I'm gonna go ahead and go Cooks. I'm gonna go Brandon Cooks there. Then I'm gonna go Chase Claypool. And another guy I'm gonna throw on this tier is Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd. Um, he's the least talented of the trio in Cincinnati. The guy that's going to give you the least amount of splash plays. But again, with everything that's factored into that Cincinnati situation, with their tough schedule, with the pace they play, the amount of dropbacks we're going to see from Joe Burrow, um, they can support three receivers. And so Tyler Boyd is a guy in that slot that's going to be he's going to be steady. He's going to get his targets, he's going to get his catches, and he's a guy that is um, going to be a quality pick in his range. You may not get a huge amount of upside, but just depending on how you structure your team, say maybe you go with the guy early, maybe like a DK Metcalf, where the value on a week to week basis may not be huge. and you're banking on big plays, then maybe you come back with a Tyler Boyd to kind of complement your team and what you have going on. So Tyler Boyd is going to be one of those rock solid picks in his range that is gonna make your team better. Uh, so I think we're gonna stop here. I think you pretty much have the gist of things. It's a lot of receivers in the range of that last kind of tier I was looking at, and so that's going to be something I'm going to be watching closely and kind of shifting as we go along. I'll jump in and throw out some sleepers there to kind of end this thing. Paris Campbell, I've talked about him at nauseum on previous pods on Twitter. A guy I love. Um, the Carson Wentz situation is kind of concerning in a way, but then also it could be good for Paris Campbell. If Wentz is out, they may take it upon themselves um, to give him more scheme touches and more underneath looks to kind of compensate for a quarterback, that may lack experience, or maybe if they make a trade. I know Nick Foles' names has been thrown out there. Um, you know, they'll still have to kind of compensate for bringing a guy in, um, that doesn't have experience specifically in, their system. I mean, Nick Foles has experience, in the system, as far as the things they want to do, but there's going to be some kind of learning curve, and he's a guy that didn't look great in his last kind of chance in Chicago. So um, because of where Paris Campbell is going, I still think it's worthwhile in those double digit rounds to take your shot on him. Will Fuller is a guy that slept on year in and year out, always slept on, but his upside is always significantly higher than his ADP. So he's a guy that um, uh, this is a clear sign that a wide receiver, as far as the safeness of it, is not as safe as people think. The first 5 rounds of it is very strong, very good, but there's questions, in that range, and so outside of that range. I'm sorry, but and Will Fuller offers his questions, but I think he offers more upside, a lot more upside than the people that are going in his range. Josh Norris um, has been a guy that's been a proponent of him over the years, and he pointed that out to very recently in one of his pods, and I mean it shows up. You look at the board, and as I was preparing for this, you look at the guys in Will Fuller's range, and his upside is just massive compared to the other guys in that range. So, you know, take a shot there, and the fact that he suspended the first game is going to suppress his ADP, even more. So, something to look at there. Another guy like Rondell Moore. Looks like he's going to have a concrete role in this underneath everything offense that Arizona runs. A lot of scheme touches for him. He's very explosive guy. The ability to uncover really quickly. Um, he's going to be the fourth receiver in that offense. And if teams don't want to uh, come all the way out of their base defenses, he's going to be getting matched up with linebackers and safeties, and I love that for him. Like, he's going to give linebackers and safety trouble. Just a shifty, rocked up, explosive guy. So he's a guy that you should be looking at in the double digit rounds. To fill out your wide receiver core, and then. One last guy I'll mention is Rashad Bateman. Just bet on the talent here, man. Just bet on the talent. I know he's not going to get 130 targets, but he's going to have an immediate role on one of the best offenses in the league, and he can impact the game in many different facets. Whether it's run after the catch, whether it's in the slide, whether it's outside. He can get downfield and make plays. I mean, not a burner, but he can get downfield and make plays. We saw that. I seen a bunch of people tweet it out, and I probably tweeted it out, quote tweeted him beating Marlon Humphrey down the sideline for a big play. He has the ability to do that. He's a guy that can make an impact in the red zone. Um, and whether it be phase, whether it be in the slot, um, just a guy that can beat you, in many different ways. And like I said, it may not be 130 targets, maybe 80 targets, but I think he can give you some efficiency in those targets. He can probably give you some spike weeks if this offense kind of lines up in the way that I think. So, got to keep an eye on in the double digit rounds, as well as Rashad Bateman. So we're gonna go ahead and close it out here. I want to thank you guys for joining me for this episode. We're gonna come right back with the quarterback tiers next. And if you missed the running back tiers, again, go back and watch that. Support the channel, subscribe to the show. Check out the Deep Cover Pod in audio form, and make sure you are, you know, subscribed there on all the digital streaming platforms. And hit us with a like, get in the comments, tell me what you like, don't like about the tiers. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.